Hey guys, welcome back to Positively Diverse. And this week I want to talk to you about staring. I experienced something at the school gates on the school run this week, and I wanted to just talk about it because it is something I have brought up on my Instagram platform. So, how do we deal with stares and how do we deal with this approach from people, especially when this comes from the eyes of a child? Well, I'm going to share my experience with you, and maybe some of you can relate, and maybe you've experienced something similar. On Monday, at the school run, I dropped off my son, and while I was in the queue waiting to drop my son off, there was another boy in the class who asked me what is on my face. Now, I have to say, I was slightly taken aback, and I was taken aback because it has actually been a while since someone has just confronted me and said, "What is that?" I think what usually tends to happen is adults will look and stare, and then they'll make their own judgment up and they'll make their own diagnosis or whatever in their heads. But on this occasion, it came from a child aged 8 years old, and he looked to his mum with a lot of curiosity and said, "What's that on your face?" And his mum immediately prodded him and said, shh, don't say anything. Now, I really feel it's important to talk about this because whilst mum was really embarrassed and didn't know which way to turn, I then thought I've got two ways to handle this. I can talk about it openly and talk to the little boy about what vitiligo is, or I can just go with what mum's doing. She's prodded him, told him not to say anything and not say a word. But I decided to go with option one. I felt ready for it, and I felt ready to actually deliver a little speech to him and talk to him about what vitiligo is. So I took that approach and I explained it to him. And I explained that vitiligo means that you get white patches on your skin. I suppose the explanation of what vitiligo is to an 8-year-old would be very different to how I would be explaining this to girls at my school, for example, who are teenagers. I would use different language and a different way of communicating with them. But with someone so young, I had to choose words that I felt were appropriate and that he would understand. So I explained my vitiligo to him, and he asked me if I had it anywhere else, and I showed him my arms. And then I explained it to mum. And when we had dropped the children off at school, I carried on explaining to mum about all the projects I'm doing and about why it's really important to talk about body confidence and body awareness. And mum didn't really say much. And sometimes I wonder, is this because she was just absorbing the information that I was saying? Or is this because she was partly embarrassed, or that she was just taken aback by my approach of being so honest and open? Now, some of us watching this video will kind of think that we're all at different stages, and some of us will think, "Oh gosh, I could never approach my vitiligo in the way that I have done." And others might be thinking, well, actually, yes, it's good that you spoke up. And I think the important thing to understand here is that we all handle things differently, and we handle things the best way that we can. In this situation, I felt like it was better for me to talk about it head on, especially because there were other children in line, and I could also hear other parents. I could sort of see them listening in, and I felt like I wanted to be able to talk about it in an open way. And whilst talking about it on the road wasn't the best, situation I would have liked to have talked to him about it in, it was, the area that it happened in, it was where it happened. I can't change that, and I wanted to deal with it there and then. So I think the point I'm making is that I had an option one, to sort of shy away from it, or option two, to kind of to talk about it. But I feel like it was really powerful. I feel like it was a really great conversation, and mum engaged with me afterwards, and she said, like, I didn't realize that you would feel comfortable talking about it. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of people will probably assume with a visual skin condition that we're not comfortable talking about our skin, maybe because they sort of think that we've got insecurities, or they think that because we look different, we're not comfortable with it. that my skin was exposed. My skin was fully exposed. And, you know, if I'm going to expose it, then I guess I'm going to have to expect, you know, people's curiosity and questions. So how do you handle people's stares? If you've got a visual difference or a disability, how do you handle this? And I think that the main thing I really want to talk about is our approach. And as mentioned, we're either in a place where we can talk about it or in a place where we can't. I think fundamentally, when we explain a condition to a child or an adult, they know what it is. That curiosity isn't there anymore. Oh, okay, that's what vitiligo is, and the question's being dealt with. But I suppose if we shy away from it and we don't say much, then you're always going to leave room for thought. You're always going to leave that person with a, oh, has she got burnt in a house fire? Or, oh, was this hereditary? And I suppose I don't want people to start making assumptions. So I am very direct about this now. It'd be really interesting to hear your feedback, whether you have a skin difference, a skin visual difference, a disability or not. You know, have you ever been judged on the way you look? How have you handled it? What's your approach been? What do you find supports you? I had my son next to me, so I think what supported me was the fact that I wanted to be that role model to him. I wanted to be that confident mum that was able to speak up and say, this is what vitiligo is. It's not a big issue. It's only a big issue if you make it a big issue. But for me, it's not a big issue. A couple of days later on the school run, one of the school mums who was in the line approached me and said, I thought you handled it really well. You were brilliant the way that you talked about it. And she then told me that she went on to say that she had freckles she's got freckles, and when she was growing up, she had a lot of bullying. She encountered a lot of bullying, and she thought that the way I dealt with it was brilliant. So it was really nice to get that feedback from a mum who had heard the conversation happening between myself, the boy, and his parents. We're all faced with difficult situations and at social situations, whether we're at work, wherever, if we're on holiday. I suppose staring will never go away. And naturally, we look at people when they're wearing something nice, or, you know, if it's appealing to us, we look at a view or look at a surrounding. I think these things are all normal. But when does staring become unacceptable? When does that level of staring then become, you know what, this isn't quite appropriate, and, you know, it's making me feel uncomfortable? So this is a conversation that I think we need to have. It's something that I think we need to think about and reflect on. And I'd love to hear some of your stories on, you know, staring and how you deal with staring. And today I've just touched a little bit on my experience of staring, but when it comes from children. So do share with me what you've experienced, especially adults. And maybe we can have a bit more of a dialogue about this. If you would like to come on board and have a conversation with me about what you've experienced, just hit your comments below and I will be in touch. If you are struggling as well with your visual appearance, I hope this has given you a bit of a boost to understand that you're not alone. And yes, we do come across ignorance, but it's how we deal with it. It's how we support educating our children and the youth. They are our future of today, and it's really important that they understand differences and disabilities. So thank you for joining me today on Positively Diverse. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below and the like button below, and I would love your comments if you've got any feedback on what I've talked about today. Stay positive, guys, stay tuned, and see you next week.